An entitled group of people dine and dash at a restaurant, leaving a pregnant woman with a bill of over $1,000 in steaks, desserts, and drinks. Things got so bad that this pregnant woman actually had to have an ambulance called for her as she was having a literal meltdown. Here's what happened. Okay, so we were having dinner last Sunday night for my niece's birthday at a very nice steakhouse, and the table next to us was having a huge party. I mean, I counted at least 36 people sat around a whole stack of tables all pushed together. Now, the night went on and we had a lovely dinner, and noticed that the people at the big table were drifting off in small groups, which is honestly nothing unusual. Well, as we were finishing up, there was a lady screaming and crying at the register at the front. She was a heavily pregnant woman and she was having an absolute meltdown. Now, we got the conversation from a waiter a little bit later, and it turns out that everyone who left prior to her had told her that they would pay for their meals and drinks separately on the way out. And as I'm from Australia, this is very common to split the bill like that. Well, they then apparently told the cashier that they'd given their portion of the bill to a friend who would pay at the end of the night. And this was supposed to all be good, except they did neither of those things. The pregnant woman got to the cashier at the end of the night and was then presented with a bill for several thousands of dollars for steaks, desserts, and drinks. And it was right at this moment that she had a meltdown. This lady was in such a state that the manager called an ambulance for her. When we left, her partner was screaming down the phone at someone to get their stupid butts back to the restaurant and pay for their bill, or they would never see him or their baby ever again. And honestly, I was so sad for them. It looked like a bunch of close friends and family having a celebration night out. I mean, who would do something like that to someone they care about? Seriously, what did they think was going to happen? Did they really think the couple would just suck it up and pay for it? I'm honestly still in shock that these people did this, and I really hope that all of this got worked out in some kind of way. Wow, talk about having awful friends and family. Seriously, they left a pregnant woman to pay for all this stuff and just all slowly trickled out of the restaurant in some kind of hopes of, like, I don't know, dining and dashing. Like, that is seriously messed up. That is so crazy to me. You would think that people would have some kind of backbone and actually pay for their meal, but instead they pull a fast one on this poor lady and her husband and basically try to say, oh yeah, she's gonna take care of it. That is crazy to me, and I've never heard of anything like that happening before, especially not a giant group like this. Like, in some kind of twisted universe, I can imagine some of them doing that, but not all of them. Seriously, what, 34 people decided, oh yeah, we're gonna get out of here and leave them with the bill. Like, that's crazy to me. There is no excuse for that, because this pregnant woman and her husband did not deserve this. And I don't know about you, but if that was me, I would not have thousands of dollars at the ready to pay for all this stuff. So hopefully there is some kind of good ending to this, because what happened to this lady is absolutely atrocious. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my dad that he made his own mess and that I am not going to help him with it? Because right now the whole family is falling apart and it is quite literally his fault. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my dad is a complete mess up. He and my mom were together for 7 years and they were high school sweethearts and everything, and my mom eventually found out that she was pregnant with me. He says he freaked out and cheated on her because he was scared of being a father, but he regretted it after the third time of sleeping with this other woman and thought that he could leave it behind. He then proposed to my mom and she accepted. Then when my mom was 7 months pregnant with me, the other woman showed up and said dad got her pregnant. And it was then that my mom called off the engagement. And from that mess, my dad has me, an 18-year-old male, and my 17-year-old sister, who we will call Stacy. Stacy is not her real name. The other woman wanted a relationship with dad, but he said he only ever loved and wanted my mom. She was a mistake and the baby was a mistake. Mom didn't want him back, and dad ended up getting 50-50 custody of me and Stacy. Her mom tried for maybe 2 years, and it sounds like to get back with dad, and even told my mom she was selfish for keeping dad from her. But then she gave up. Dad pined for mom for years and tried to win her back, and it really pissed Stacy off because her mom was basically saying that her dad chose mom and me over them. So she basically had a chip on her shoulder with me and my mom. Now, when she was way too young to be saying stuff like this, she started calling me and my mom degrading insults. And my dad would get so mad when Stacy talked to mom that way, and dad would just tell mom that he was sorry and that he'd make it work, while also desperately proclaiming his love for her. And this was all going on when I was old enough to remember witnessing this pathetic mess. I was 11 years old when dad moved on and finally let mom go. He met a woman and got married to her, which then brought about my 6-year-old sister, who we will call Georgie. Well, Stacy was furious that dad fell in love with someone else other than her mom, that instead of falling in love with her mom again, he found someone else after letting go of mom after 11 years. So Stacy hates Georgie and she treats her like garbage. My dad's wife passed away when Georgie was only 3, and Stacy has said some pretty twisted stuff about her to Georgie. And she's also said it to me because I got along with my dad's late wife. Now, I have mostly stayed out of all of this all the way until now, but I answer occasional calls from my dad. He said he wanted to get the family together when we talked yesterday, and that he wants us to be close again, that he needs my help to do it, and that he can't continue with this toxic mess. Well, I told him he made his own mess and I'm not helping him with it, that he needs to take accountability and stop making it worse. My dad then told me that I should care about my sisters and how we'll never be close if this continues, but I told him that it was not my fault. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation for trying to stay out of it? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk, but your dad absolutely is. This guy has children from like 3 different moms. He has literally never been consistent with anybody, and he just constantly keeps messing up and is now trying to get you to help him fix it. And I personally think under any other circumstance, this might be something you're willing to like entertain in the slightest. But the fact that he's basically trying to guilt trip you into taking care of it by saying, oh, you should be sisters, we'll never be close if you don't fix it. It's like, wait a second, I'm not the reason this all went down like this. This quite literally stems back to him cheating on your mom. Like, this is literally not your problem, and the fact that you're 18, in my opinion, is like the best thing about this, because you can absolutely choose where you want to live. And if you're able to, you can move out and move on with your life. Because in my opinion, I really do think your dad failed in many ways, and that failure is something that he needs to address and not you. I feel that my girlfriend is taking advantage of me financially, as she is constantly and consistently making me pay for everything around the house, simply because I make more money than her. And now, as a result, I'm rethinking my entire relationship, because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old male, and I'm in my first year of being a corporate lawyer in New York City, where I make about $250,000 per year, and I work from 60 to 70 hours per week. I'm a first-generation Taiwanese American, and my parents are engineers, and with their help, I am currently debt-free. I live with my 24-year-old girlfriend, who I met about 2 years ago when I was in law school, and who currently works at a nonprofit near me, where she has an entry-level job making about $60,000 a year. Anyways, she has been living with me for about a year now, and while initially it went well, I'm now having some issues. I pay the entire $5,100 rent and utilities for our very small one-bedroom apartment, and she insists that I pay for virtually everything else as well because she makes less. And she also pays for some things for herself, but it's stuff like groceries or her going out with her friends. We had conversations about money early on, and I agreed that I would pay for rent and utilities and for our dates, essentially because for starters, I like doing it. Also, I make more money, and she agreed that she would spend more quality time with me whenever I want, if you know what I mean. So while it was going great for like 8 months, the situation has been getting out of hand recently. She basically insists that I take her out for expensive dinners to trendy places that she finds on TikTok at least twice a week. She asks for makeup and clothing and kitchen and home things, and while I suppose I can't afford it, I'm not saving or investing as much as I want. When I try to confront her, she just argues very passionately, saying that we have an arrangement and that she doesn't want to be with a cheap guy and just sort of exhaust my energy. Beyond that, I'm conflicted. I really like this girl, and she seems very serious about this relationship. She's very family-oriented, her degree is in adolescent psychology, she wants to teach and have kids and all this other good stuff, but I feel like she's only with me because I have a well-paying job, and she has this idea of getting married to a rich guy. I know a lot of senior male firm partners and finance guys in New York City who have stay-at-home wives, and it does work for them, and I honestly like this scenario. But the reality is that I can't afford to do it now. I need to save up for a nest egg for a few years and live frugally in case my career doesn't go where I want it to. How do I deal with this situation? Should I stay with her, or is this kind of a lost cause? What should I do? Okay, for starters, this does not sound like one of those situations where the wife is a stay-at-home mom and she like takes care of the house. If anything, it seems like you've set up a very sketchy deal between the two of you, and now you're realizing this is not working out in your favor. Especially that third point you made, which I'm not going to elaborate on, but it definitely sounds super sketchy. So in my opinion, yes, I do think she's taking advantage of you financially, but also you're definitely at fault for basically handing it to her. And I have to disagree with you on some of your points, because you're saying, oh yeah, she's family oriented and she's a good girlfriend and she wants to have kids. But if you really think this is going to get better all of a sudden just because you have a family and make things official, then in my opinion, I think you're out of your mind delusional. Because then everything you're talking about is going to be permanent. She will absolutely stick around, and then there's nothing you can do about it. This might just be the tip of the iceberg because you are spending a lot of money already. free. So yes, your girlfriend is absolutely taking advantage of you and all of your money, but also you are doing nothing to fix your situation. And in my opinion, nothing's gonna get any better unless some kind of change happens. Am I the jerk for telling my sister that her new boyfriend can't bring his child to my wedding, as I made it very clear 2 years ago that my wedding was going to be child-free? Because right now she is calling me a massive jerk, and she is very angry that I've refused to give in to her demands. Here's what happened. I'm a 33-year-old female, and I'm getting married in November of 2024, which has been planned for the last 2 years. My sister, who's 36 years old, has just split up with her husband and has started a new relationship with one of her colleagues. For the sake of the story, we'll call him Brandon. And this is someone who I've briefly met a couple of times before, but I don't know them very well. He's nice enough, but my future husband has never met him, and like I say, I don't really know him myself. My sister mentioned to Brandon that she is my maid of honor and that I will be getting married in November within the first week of their new relationship. Before my sister and her husband split up, and for the sake of the story, we'll call him Ryan, that's not his real name, they were both invited to the wedding, and they'd been married for 15 years, so Ryan was a big part of the family. Well, Brandon automatically assumed he was invited to the wedding in Ryan's place, which I did not like, but sort of accepted that she'd won a +1, and Ryan would not want to come now anyways given the situation, so I just let it go. Well, she then informs me that Brandon told his daughter, who we will call Kelly, who he co-parents with his ex, that they're both coming to my wedding, so Kelly is really excited. Now, for reference, Kelly is 10 years old, so I had to remind my sister that we are having a child-free wedding, which was communicated to everyone who was invited to attend. As we ourselves don't have children and we don't want children, so we didn't want children at our wedding, which all of our family and friends have been fine with. Now, I've met Kelly and she is a complete and spoiled brat, and definitely not a child that we would want at our wedding, regardless of if we were having a child-free wedding or not. Now, my sister thought our refusal was down to the cost of adding her as a guest when we've already reached the maximum numbers, so it was initially offered to pay for her place, but I told her it's not about the money, but instead, firstly, it's because I don't like Kelly, and secondly, Brandon overstepped by assuming his child could come to my wedding without even trying to talk to myself or my husband first. I also calmly told her that she knew we were having a child-free wedding and should have told him straight away to avoid this happening, since it's also not fair to our friends and family members who have arranged childcare for their own children to respect our wishes. Well, she's now calling me a jerk because, according to her, it's going to make things very difficult for her when she has to tell him that he can't bring Kelly as she's excited about going to a wedding. But I told her that wasn't my problem, as I am not responsible for him trying to muscle in on a family event that he literally wasn't even invited to in the first place. I've offered to talk to him for her just to try and keep the peace, but she said I would just end up being more of a jerk to him than I already am for telling her that her new boyfriend's child can't come to my wedding. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I do not think you're the jerk at all, because I'm pretty sure your sister knew about this well in advance just like everybody else. She knew along with the rest of the family that no child is going to be attending this wedding. So I'm assuming you spelled this out very clearly, and there literally is no excuse for her to be like, oh, well, this is just not fair, which is such a stupid thing to say because she has known about this for 2 years, and there is no way this is some kind of surprise for your sister. She absolutely knew that you guys were having a child-free wedding, and she knew for a fact this was a feature of what you guys were doing. So for her to falsely claim that, oh wow, you're just gonna ruin everything, you're such a jerk for doing this, it's like, where was this talk like 2 years ago before you put your foot in your mouth? So no, you're not the jerk at all, and I think your sister is in the wrong for not correcting this much sooner, because any backlash that she experiences, in my opinion, is quite literally her own fault. Am I the jerk for reminding my ex-husband that I'm only responsible for our children and not all of his kids? Here's what happened. Okay, so my ex-husband and I have 2 kids together. We divorced about 10 years ago now because I feel like he regressed as a husband and a father during my second pregnancy, and he was even worse when our younger son was born. He was acting like a high school or college kid, or a simple 20-something-year-old with no kids, despite the fact that he's 40 and I'm 35. He spent more time with his friends than with us, and his friends were also treating me more like his mom and expecting me to pick him up from their houses when they needed to get on with stuff. We fought for 50-50 custody of our kids, which he was given, and for the first 2 or 3 years, he had every other weekend and a 2-week period during the summer with them, as well as alternating holidays. He started to be more involved, and eventually he got 50% custody, and it was at that time that I found out he got some woman pregnant, and he realized that with 3 kids, he needed to get his act together. He ended up with full custody of his 3rd child, child, and then he met his wife. They have 2 more children together now, and there are 2 kids in her life, but I don't believe they are her biological children, who she is also partially supporting. Those 2 kids don't live with them, but apparently the both of them pay for stuff for this child. Now, my ex and I started getting along better, but then his marriage was really rocky. As his marriage got worse, he started treating me like a co-parent to all of his kids. He would bring his other children to custody exchanges and was expecting interactions between me and his other children. Then it was requests to babysit for him and his wife, which of course I never did. Then it was comments about our boys' clothing at my house being sent to his house for his other kids and how we needed to make sure that they had adequate clothing. Well, I told him that there was no we in that situation, and he said, of course there is, we're co-parents. But I said for our 2, sure, but not for the other kids. It was then requested for me to have his children in my home or to take them out to eat with me and our kids. And finally, it has turned into back to school craziness. I bought supplies for the boys, and he told me I didn't buy nearly enough stuff for everybody. And I was like, okay, hold on, what's that supposed to mean? He then pointed out that what I bought wouldn't be possible to share evenly between all 5 children. But I told him straight up, we don't have 5 children. We have only 2. And it's only the 2 kids that I bought that stuff for. I told him I'm responsible for our children and not his 3 other ones. I told him that he has a wife and they share 2 of those children and the other is in their home, so it is completely up to them. He told me that I know they don't have a lot of money, and I cut him off and I told him that still didn't make his children my problem. He said I can't possibly take care of just 2 of them, not when we're co-parenting and all 5 kids live together 50% of the time. He said that I should be part of the community to help raise these kids, and that keeping my distance like I do is so cold. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, of course you're not the jerk. Your ex-husband is an idiot, and the fact that he's trying to drag you into his mess, in my opinion, is the greatest icing on this cake you could ever ask for. It's legitimate, obvious proof that this guy messed around and absolutely found out what was going to happen when he becomes a father when he's basically not ready for that. For him to somehow try to include you in taking care of these kids that are not yours, while also asking you to buy more school supplies and babysit those kids, that is crazy to me. You are completely justified in telling him, no, I'm not taking care of those kids. Those are not my kids and I'm only taking care of mine. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, because the way your ex-husband is acting is truly insane. Am I the jerk for telling my mother that she is not a first-time mom now that she had a new baby? Because after growing up with my grandparents raising me, as my mom was way too young to have a kid herself at 16 years old, I now feel incredibly offended by her remarks. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 24-year-old male, and I have a good relationship with my mother, who's 40 years old, even though, as you can tell from our age, she had me when she was very young and obviously lacked the maturity to raise me. So I live with my grandparents, who were then below the poverty line, for most of my childhood, while my mother moved away to get her college education. Now, I don't blame her for her choices. I know that she worked hard to improve herself and to get to a place where she would have the means to raise me right, but it just wasn't until I was 11 or 12 that she was stable enough to get me to live with her. And for reference, my biological dad was never in the picture. Anyways, now my mother is financially comfortable and she is happily married, and she gave birth to her second son a couple of weeks ago. I don't live with her anymore. I mean, we're not in the same city and it is a 2-hour drive away from each other, so it wasn't until yesterday that I managed to visit her and see my half-brother for the first time. I then noticed that she was surrounded by a lot of fancy accessories, so I was like, wait, what are those? And she was like, that's the baby's Lexus stroller and Louis Vuitton diaper bag, of course. So I said something like, you really went overboard, didn't you? And then she said something that really hurt my feelings. She said she now had the chance to experience motherhood for the first time, and that she was feeling like a first-time mom because when she had me, she was so young and unprepared and financially vulnerable. So I told her straight up that she was not a first-time mom and that I couldn't understand why she would even say something like that to me. She then tried to argue that she didn't mean it like that, but I was still very much upset, and I just didn't push it because my stepfather arrived. She then texted me after I left, but I didn't reply yet. I also didn't pick up when she tried to call me, and honestly, it's kind of bothering me. So am I the jerk for holding on to this in the way that I have? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk for getting upset about this, because what she just said is completely offensive. Like, if I grew up in the way that you did, where you were raised by your grandparents instead of your mother, and she was never involved in your life until you were, 12 years old? Like, I would be hurt as well. And also, I'm not obtuse, and I totally get that your mom definitely was way too young to raise you, but for her to turn around and be like, oh, I'm a new mother now, like, that really is hurtful, and I would be super offended offended if that happened to me, because it's almost like she's just forgetting that the person she's talking to right now is literally the son that she never raised. Sure, she had you when you were 12 years old, but like all those years beforehand was with your grandparents. And now you have a step-sibling who literally has all these expensive items and they're actually getting the care that you deserved. And you're literally missing out on that because your mom was completely irresponsible. It really is a tricky situation, and I'm so sorry that you're going through that. Because at the end of the day, that was a very insensitive thing to say. And even though she had you when she was 16 years old, she's now 40 years old, and she absolutely should have known better. And in my opinion, she definitely needs to apologize and try to make this situation right. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.